Hello, bowling fans. This is Dustin J. Markowitz coming to you taped, as always, from the gem along the Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Arizona. That's 2 weeks in a row I got to do that intro, Eric. I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
Still a crime that they let you in a pro shop, but go ahead.
I know, huh? On location here at Elite Pro Shop in Fort Mojave, Arizona, and you are listening to the #1 bowling podcast, at least in our minds, Bowling Evolved. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime. He's a 5-time PBA national champion, a member of the PBA Millionaires Club, and the man with the golden left hand, the one and only Eric Forkel. Eric, how are you doing this morning?
Well, you know what? I'm doing great this morning, and please don't ruin it.
Hey, you know what? I got up this early to record the show, so I'm feeling pretty good about that, too. So, today's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah. Well, us old people, we like to get up early, so this is perfect for me.
Yeah. You get that 5 a.m. special at Denny's, right? Is that what it is?
Well, no. It's just a habit to get up early, and that's just I'm just used to. I love A Squad. I'm pretending I'm on A Squad right now, so I'm up bright and early just for you.
Wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the second week in a row. Eric and I have been discussing, and now that our times have kind of come together a little bit better, we are going to be trying to get a show out, hopefully every week, maybe a couple times a month, based on availability and scheduling. But we had a lot of positive feedback on the last show with Steve Adams, so I want to say thank you very much to all of our listeners. It's been a great time being back. I think Eric will agree with me wholeheartedly when I say I miss doing the show as often as we used to. And, Eric, it's always fantastic to see that the people that were listening to us when we first started this thing, we're going on 5 years now, 4 years? 4 years. July 2012 is when we first started. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a cult kind of thing. We've got like a cult following. We got a handful of people that for some reason like to listen to you and I banter. It's just amazing.
Tell me about it. And with that being said, speaking of bantering, I figured that would be a good way to open up our first topic, because I know that we had talked about several months ago, we had the discussion on the show about Ron Moore's tournament, the senior, basically equivalent of a professional tournament where he was discounting anyone that won, I believe, 3 or more titles, and you had a chance to bowl with Mr. Moore, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I had a chance to bowl with him in something that was set up prior to that. It was in the city tournament here. A friend of mine asked us to put together a bit of I guess you could call it a super team. And this was prior to this whole thing coming out. I had already agreed that once this all came out, it was kind of awkward to bowl. But we got through it. And funny, I bowled with him the last couple events in town in the Open and the Senior Masters. You cross paths, locker room, practice session, etc. And it's still kind of I know he wants things to be really cool and nice, because in his mind he believes if he starts the tournament off this way, then maybe down the road he'll allow what I consider the better players to bowl. But I was quick to tell him that, well, when you decide to do that, then all those people that you're trying to cater to, I guess they're just not going to bowl, so now you'll have no entries according to what you believe. So the whole thing is kind of strange, and I got to be honest with you, I thought one of the strangest things that he would like me to do is to help him develop the pattern at the plaza for the left-handers. In other words, he wants to use me as a guinea pig. He's going to put out some stuff and wants me to bowl on it, and then I'm supposed to give him feedback onto how easy or how tough it plays. I just thought it was kind of ironic that the person who is not allowing the better bowlers to play in his tournament, and especially myself, who lives 15 minutes from the event, but then again, he wants me to help him develop the pattern. So he's hoping that I will reconsider to do this for him, and at this point in time, I have absolutely no desire. It just doesn't make sense in my mind. It's not my job. He's not going to pay me. He just wants me to do this to help him make the tournament, I would assume, as fair as possible in a game that can never be fair. So I thought that was quite ironic. Another twist to the saga of I don't want the better players to bowl in this tournament, so the lesser players will show up. It just still rubs me the wrong way, and now that we've brought it up again, it's aggravating me all over again.
Well, the irony of this is that unfortunately it is not just on the local level as this tournament is, but also now on the national level, which actually gives me an opportunity to introduce our guest today. He's a man that really doesn't need any introduction. He is very well known in the bowling circles. He is the founder and author of the 11th Frame bowling column and website. He is a multi-time PBA regional champion, I believe 30 regional titles, 5 USBC championship titles, Open championship titles, and a member of the USBC Hall of Fame, the one and only Jeff Richgels. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, and you guys don't know what early is. Trust me, I've been up for many, many, many hours already today. But I guarantee I go to bed way earlier than you. I go to bed when old people go to bed, believe me.
Well, that just goes to show he is he is a super senior old.
Yeah, in my hours I am. Believe me, see?
Yeah. Well, how about we join in on the aggravation, Jeff? Because I know that there's definitely some aggravation all the way around now with the recent announcement of the new USBC Open Championship rules. And for those of you who aren't aware, the several rules have been changed by USBC, including that no two PBA members who have won, I believe, a national is it PBA members, Jeff, or national winning PBA members can be on the same team at the USBC Open Championship?
Here's how it is. If you have won a PBA Tour title at any time and are under 60 years old, you cannot bowl with another PBA member of any kind. Once you reach 60, nothing matters. You basically have the same status as anybody. So when Walter reaches 60, he can bowl with whoever he wants. As an example, Tom Baker right now can bowl with whoever he wants, I guess is a good example, or Johnny Petraglia. But for our team, that meant that Mark McDowell and Mike Shady could not bowl together anymore, so we've moved Mark over to our other team, and Dan Geppert's going to bowl with our team. But there was a lot of confusion in how they wrote the rule, and almost no one understood the second part of that. Everyone understood it pretty much to be that no two tour titleists could bowl together, but what USBC intended with the rule was that if you have a PBA Tour title and are under age 60, you can't bowl with another PBA member, period, which was not made clear, which I discovered when we put our team in, and USBC, I wrote a big story about it. The USBC official was talking to Matt Cannizzaro and realized that we didn't understand the rule, and he got a hold of me, and one thing led to another, and they ended up realizing that they didn't write the rule clearly, that many people were in the same boat as us and very confused, and I would have dropped my card if I would have understood it before the end of last year so I could keep bowling with our guys. And so what they ended up doing, long story short, is putting in what amounts to a grandfather-type clause or something, a second chance, and if you drop your PBA card by July 31st, you will be considered a non-member for next year's tournament. So I've already submitted my resignation to the PBA after 30-some years, and will no longer be a PBA member starting August 1st, sadly, but it's the only way I can do it until McDowell and Shady turn 60 years old, and we can all bowl together again. But I would have had to leave our group completely because Mark's on one team, and he's the PBA Tour champ, and Shades is on the other team, and he's a PBA Tour champ. And so, Eric, you're in the same boat. You have PBA Tour titles no matter how long ago you won them, and you're not 60 years old yet, so you will not be able to bowl with any other PBA member on a team or its doubles starting next year.
Well, I don't quite – I mean, I get it. I kind of get what they're trying to do, but obviously it's very disappointing because you start bowling with people year after year like yourself, and you obviously have great friendships, you have great team camaraderie, and now something like this comes along and breaks it up. I don't know.
It's like a family for us. I mean, we've been the same guys been together.
Yeah. Sure.
All 10 of us have been together, or 9 of the 10 of us, since 1998, some of us going back to the early 80s, and our 5 guys on our team, this would have been our 16th year together, and now we're done until everybody's 60 years old.
Yeah, like I said, and obviously there's probably some other teams that are in the same boat, and it's just like, I don't understand, in a game, in a sport that we seem to be losing membership left and right, and less people really want to go bowl these tournaments. Why do you keep trying to change and twist things to make it more difficult for maybe teams to stick together. I'm sure there's some alternate wisdom behind all this because they normally have great intentions, but it's just stuff like this blows me away. This is just another thing that's just an aggravation, and then if you want to keep doing what you're doing, now you've got to drop being a PBA member, and so now the PBA loses a membership, so now it hurts that organization, so to speak. So you see, once again, bowling is, instead of all helping each other, they in a way, you're taking from the other to continue to do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's going to make it really hard for. I appreciate that they finally made it so the Belmos, the Rashes, Pete, and everybody can. The best players in the world can all bowl in the tournament. Which, if they're dues-paying members, I've always said all along they should have been able to bowl. When you were on tour in a star, you should have been able to bowl in some manner. They're going to finally let them do that, which I think is a great thing, and I applaud them for that. But boy, it's going to be tough for all those guys to find any kind of decent teams to bowl together because they can't be even with a regional player or anything. And there's just, I'm sure, a lot of scrambling going on with people trying to figure out who they're bowling with, just knowing what our two teams went through. And I know we're not alone. I know there's other people in the same boat.
No, and the only thing I could say, and obviously this is before me, I know back in the day, I want to say in the 70s, maybe the 80s, they had a classic division out there, because I remember Joe Hutchinson used to tell me about it, and basically all the touring players would get together and form teams, and they would go to the nationals and bowl in the classic division. So you'd have all these touring players there bowling on these teams, and it was like watching a giant national tournament at the arena or wherever it was. And from what I understand, the people they'd have quite the turnout to watch the classic division bowl and to watch all these guys bowl. And they took it away. They got rid of it, and for some reason, and I never could understand why they never brought it back. I mean, talk about having something now with the way they push the team bowling on TV. That would be just another great venue to showcase the greatest bowlers in the world bowling on teams, and people, they can make a huge event out of it, having it at the Open. It'd be like a special deal. And I don't know if they don't think of those things or they don't want to, but that would be the perfect place to redo the Open, the Classic division. That would be the perfect showcase to have it.
Well, it did. It went away because the entries got so small that was the decision they made. And after, I think it was from 62 to 79. Is what if I recall my numbers right.
Okay.
And the numbers, and now there's less touring guys than there were then, so I'm not sure how big it would be, but. Yeah,
well, to me, you could make it. There's many different ways you can do it. People would form teams. And maybe they create this big team event, team tournament. I don't know. If it's promoted properly and you get enough people interested, there's enough regional members across the country who wouldn't mind maybe knocking heads against those guys in a major event, kind of like the thing they had in Vegas last year, maybe something like that, but on a little bigger scale. If anything's promoted properly with the right incentive, I think you can form teams all the way across, I still think there's enough PBA members who might want to do it. I don't know, it's just things like this. I don't think they're doing enough to showcase the best players and maybe create some environments where, maybe a bunch of regional guys could knock off a great team of all the top players, and maybe that's a good story. Stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I have no doubt about that.
I think that we would all agree that it seems like a lot of times bowling, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, that there's a lot of situations where, I'm sure you've heard the expression, cut off your nose to spite your face. And even looking at it from a local perspective, there's a lot of tournaments that even I used to bowl as a scratch bowler that they don't want the higher end bowlers being in there anymore, so they start putting average caps. They start putting this, start putting that. And it almost seems like this generational gap that's coming up where, your guys' era, and then now the next big area of scratch bowling is really the high school collegiate program, the younger youth program coming up, that there's not as much incentive anymore to be a top flight bowler, which to me is really a sad situation. Now, Jeff, looking at it from your perspective as obviously one of the forefront riders in the bowling world, I mean, can you really tell somebody who wants to go out and be the best in the world that it's really worth it to be a professional bowler or a top flight bowler anymore?
Well, unless you're going to be, one of the very, very, very best. I mean, it's hard to say that. Obviously, your top 10, 15, 20, 25 guys are making some decent money, especially if they're willing to go across the world and they've got good contracts and that sort of thing. But I mean, if you're going to be, I don't want to say run of the mill, but not be one of the very best. I mean, even someone like Eric who won, 5 titles or so, that was McDowell as well. I mean, you made a decent living there for many years, and nowadays, if you won 5 titles over a 10 or 15-year career, I don't know, would that even be worth it compared to what you could if you could get a decent regular job? That's a tough thing to ask. I mean, I basically tell anyone that asks me, I said, you take your shot, get a sponsor, do it when you're young and you're single and you don't have any other responsibilities, and if you don't become a big star, get yourself, use that college education that you hopefully got.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I got to be honest with you. When I look at today's environment compared to say 10, 15 years ago or even 20 years ago, obviously there's no comparison. I mean, the opportunities were far greater back then. I mean, nowadays there are certain guys who get paid extremely well, but the opportunities that were, when you can bowl 30 to 35 tournaments a year and everything else in between, regionals, what have you, it was a full-time job. I don't know if it's a full-time job anymore. Most of these guys, from what I see, they go overseas, they have to bowl overseas, and then when that's not going on, they go do clinics overseas, and the companies send them this and this here and there. I mean, I just saw that I think Randy and Rhino are in Korea doing something right now. I mean, they're doing it because they got to make a living. They got to get paid. It's just not. It's not really a tour anymore per se. It's just the opportunities I think are far less. And again, unless you're some of the special elite players, I mean, there was always guys back in the day who made good money, but there was just always so much more opportunity, and you got more chances to compete basically year round, almost every week if you wanted it, but besides the regionals and what have you. But nowadays, I just don't see that. And the guys who, like you said, the guys who do overseas to bowl, they better have great sponsors because it's very expensive to travel abroad to compete in bowling tournaments. I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine how much it would cost, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, maybe even more just to go. And I mean, you got to finish like first or second to make a little money, and then you still have to beat everyone over there. It just seems really difficult compared to how it was, say, 20 years ago. And I just don't know what the incentive is for young bowlers. And it's kind of hard to, you better have a good bankroll behind you, and you better be a young superstar that the company is really behind, maybe like a Wesley Lowe or somebody like that. But I think he's doing his college right now, which is very smart. And I think once he's done with that, then maybe he'll jump out there. But you've got to have a special talent, and then you better have some luck to get somebody behind you. Whereas before, you could just basically show up every week out there. If you got your money together, you take your shot, whether it's a rabbit or not, but you're still competing every week against the best. And if you had your week, you could maybe make the finals, then maybe make a TV show, and now you're on national TV live, and everybody knows who you are, just like that. And then that's how people became well known.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but I'm thinking our show is becoming bowling depressed because we're not saying anything positive what's going on.
Well, the fact that people can still do it and still make money at it, and I mean, certain guys, that's all they do. So, I mean, in that regard, it's still there. I mean, even back in that day, there was still a bunch of guys out there who didn't make a lot of money. You always had the guys who just traveled every week, and maybe they get a check here and there, maybe a final, but they really weren't making a living doing it, but they loved it and they wanted to do it. Whereas, let me take a little sidebar here. One thing I've noticed now on the senior tour, let's say, the senior tour is made up now, it's basically the Hall of Fame tour. You got all the Hall of Famers out there, then you got guys from 60 and above. Well, they've done everything they can to help those guys from 60 and above, because the guys 60 and above know they have a hard time competing with all the younger 50-year-olds who are basically Hall of Fame type bowlers. And, you know, if you look at the tour on the senior tour right now, it's basically the tour of the 80s, all the talent level. And those guys, when they get done bowling, they don't really go in the bar and drink like they used to out there or go play golf. No, they go do what they do. They come back the next day and they're ready to go. It's just, they treat it almost like a job out there now, whereas 15, 20 years ago, the senior tour was, the guys went out there to have a good time. They did karaoke, they played golf, and then they did a little bowling on the side, basically. Now it's the complete opposite. It's all about bowling. It's all about trying to make money. You got to beat the Hall of Famers. It's like a business. It's like a job out there. And that whole senior tour vibe has changed dramatically in the last 5, 6 years that I've been bowling the ones here in Vegas, because I would go and watch them prior to that with the friends of mine who used to bowl it, and it was completely different. So that just goes to show even the senior tour now has become extremely difficult, and there's not a lot of money overall, and the talent level is through the ceiling to try to win out there. And it just goes to show that things change even on that senior tour compared to, say, 15, 20 years ago, when there was pretty good money out there, but those guys were having a party out there every week. That's really what it was. It was completely different than the regular tour. So to me, the senior tour has turned a lot into the. Oh, it's just unbelievable what I've seen in the last 5, 6 years. It's just amazing how it's changed, and you know, it is what it is. So not only has the regular tour changed,
bowling the regular tour that are bowling the senior tour, and I don't think there were near as many guys back in the day that bowled.
No.
That's the difference.
No way.
Walter Ray, Baker, Amleto, Parker, Duke.
Yep.
All these guys are in pretty good shape. Some of them in really good shape, and they're still bowling full-time for a living on both tours, and that didn't exist on the senior tour. And
they're winning titles. They're winning titles.
Yeah, it is. It's really an interesting, it's an interesting setup there that is really, if you're a historian and you follow this, it's just unbelievable how it's changed, because again, our late great dear friend, Mr. Barry Gurney, when he was on the senior tour, I followed it, because he was out there, and I would go and watch him bowl when they would come to town, and I would see I even had a chance back in the day. I repped for like 3-4 weeks for Storm. I was the ball rep on the senior tour when the regular tour was off, and I really enjoyed it back in the early 2000s. It was great. And I went out there and I'm like, these guys are having a party out here. Isn't anybody serious? And, and now it is the exact opposite. It is guys busting their asses, working hard, drilling balls, doing this, doing that, ball reps galore. I mean, it's just craziness. It's amazing how it's changed, and it is. It's the 80s in an older version of the 80s, and I always say it's a shame they can't do more with the senior tour, because people who know bowling and love bowling, all the guys that they grew up with are out there bowling, and it's pretty amazing. And there's more guys coming. Like I said, Ryan Schaefer will be out there next year, and there might be a few others turning 50. So it's not going to get any easier. It's only going to get tougher.
Yeah, it's when you're just a run-of-the-mill guy like me, and who's kept himself in pretty good shape. And I thought, I might have had some fun out there, as good a shape as I've kept myself in.
Sure.
And to go out, and I did okay at the start, and I made a couple of runs and came close. And now, I'll be 54 next month, or actually this month. And those guys beat my brains out long ago, and now that they're all out there, and I have zero chance, really. I mean, it would. And not that I don't still enjoy going out 2 or 3 times a year, but boy, I mean, there's guys that basically this is part of their job. I figured that when I got to the senior tour, it'd be a bunch of guys like it used to be, where they weren't bowling for a living anymore, and they're all all those guys. And I have nothing against that whatsoever. For the fans, it's fantastic to see Pete and Norm and Walter and Amleto and Parker and all those guys. It's great for the fans and the proprietors and that, but it's for the run-of-the-mill player, it's like, I have no business, not that I plan to make any money out of it, but boy, if you have any dreams, those guys will crush them.
Well, again, you're trying to beat King Kong on a ladder out there, and that's fine. And, there's two ways to look at it. I mean, it's still, obviously, if you go out there and you can actually beat one of those guys and you actually win, talk about fulfillment of a dream. Not only do you win a national title, but you beat one of the best to do it. There's that aspect of it, and then there's the reality of it. The odds of that happening aren't that great. Then again, the guy, Noel Vasquez, he won up in Brentwood. He beat Weber, one of the few times Weber didn't win a tournament this year. He beat Weber, and, he said, I saw him like the week after that because he came by the shop and doing some stuff for Genesis, and he says to me, he says, yeah, I got lucky. I said, no, you didn't get lucky. I said, you had a great day. You had a great moment. You shot 240. He had 2-1. You beat one of the best of all time. Believe me, that's not luck. You bowled great. You deserved to win. You could hang your hat on that. He says, yeah, that's cool. He says, you're right. I says, please, you can be on, take it for what it was. You beat one of the greatest of all time, who's on one of the greatest runs of all time.
Yeah.
And you won, It's not like you won a local 5-gamer or 10-gamer or even a regional. You won a national stop against, again, nothing but Hall of Famers, nothing but the best. You're not beating
just the average this year. It's his name, and the rest are all Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's just Weber. I think it's just Weber and Walter Ray pretty much, and Noel Vasquez. I think that's this year so far. It's one of those very, it's a very strange year, and obviously he's bowling great, but everything's kind of going. He's catching the breaks at the right time, beating the right people at the right time. A break here, a break there. Pete McCordick getting a 6 count on a ball that, on a shot that he never, they're both shooting 260, 270. It was just one of those fluky things. That's when it's going your way. I mean, that's just the way it is. But the point is, the senior tour is, I just wish it had more power TV-wise. I don't know. I just think people would find it interesting, and maybe it would have a little more, maybe they would get a little excited again in a different, because they'd see all their old-time stars, and I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just too old-fashioned, but it's a shame that they don't cover it the way I think they should, because it is unbelievably competitive, and people know who everybody is out there, because the bowling world, the people who watch bowling, they're the same people to me who've watched bowling for 25, 30 years. It's not like, I don't feel like you're bringing in new viewers every week. I think it's a group of people who just love to watch bowling, and they know those players.
And Eric, you bring up a really interesting point, and we're closing in towards the end of the show, but there is one thing I'd like to bring up. And you were talking about covering bowling, and now, Jeff, I'll throw it back to you, because obviously over the last 20 years, of course I've worked at myself as a bowling journalist, but you've really been at the forefront of how everything has changed as far as bowling media, the internet, social media, et cetera, et cetera. What do you see, obviously you see that bowling on TV is more geared towards what I like to call the MTV generation. Obviously they're trying to attract these younger fans, but it seems like the guys that are getting the breaks now, be it ball sponsorships or at least press coverage, it's all from guys like you in social media. Now, with your article and your column, is that something you tried to gear toward? Was that something that you expected, or is this something that just kind of happened because of the way the PBA and other bowling coverage has gone?
Yeah, when I started it, 11thframe.com, it wasn't 11thframe.com. It was just a blog at the newspaper company I've worked for since 1980, where I started as a writer and as a bowling columnist, and I recreated it, telling them I'd do it on my free time, and it would get more hits than you're going to believe, and it did, and they supported it, and eventually, it wasn't anything significant to the bottom line of a big newspaper company. Don't get me wrong. They didn't even bat an eye when I said, I'm going to go do this on my own, and they didn't care, and I was only doing it on my free time anyway. So that's when I started it. Mike Flanagan had the idea and had Brian Burkhart to do the tech on it, and that's where it went off on its own, where it is now. And eventually, I saw the opportunity to charge a real minimal amount and then use that money to be able to go cover the World Series of Bowling, to go to the PBA League, to pay for, some of the things that I wanted to add to it. And also pay Brian for his time. And the sad thing is that the way the industry has evolved, there aren't really any newspaper bowling. There's no Dick Evans, John Archibald like that left anymore. There are bowling publications in markets like Texas and Vegas and California, and there's a Windy City in Chicago, and there's one in Milwaukee, the 10-Pin Journal, and some of them have some websites for that. But when it comes to covering bowling on a daily basis, the sad thing is I'm kind of it. And that's really because I'm doing it on my free time, and I'm not doing this as a full-time job. Like bowling to me deserves way more than I give it. That's for sure. I wish, but there's not enough money in it to support doing it full-time. It would have to be. So I think I just reached 1,600 subscribers at $2 a month, basically. So you can do the math on that. It's not a lot of money. It's not enough to support something full-time. And if I charged enough to make 1,600 be worth it full-time to quit my job, which I don't want to do either, but if I did, there wouldn't be enough. I wouldn't have 1,600. So the higher you raise it, the fewer people you probably have, and then you don't ever get that. If I had 10,000 and, not even 10,000, if I had 5 times as many, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people paying that, well, then maybe it becomes realistic and I hire a couple people or something. At some point you could make something out of it. But no, it just, the money's not there, and that's just how bowling is. It's just like, why are there not 100,000 Extra Frame subscribers, which in that case the PBA could take Extra Frame and really do something with it as far as advertising and funding and that sort of thing, and really make it something. And there just aren't enough people willing to put their money out for bowling, and it's why newspapers don't cover it as much anymore. It's why it's on CBS Sports Network and ESPN without rights fees. It's just the reality of what it is. And I don't mean this in a denigrating way, but I always say bowlers are cheap, and probably the better word is frugal. And it's been history, and it's become, bigger, but you can't expect bowlers to support everything about bowling too. The weakness in our sport is that we can't get enough outside companies to put money into the sport in any way to make it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what's missing. We always, I when I say that about bowlers, I'm not really complaining about bowlers. If we're legitimate sport, that we would be attracting more outside companies putting big money in. ESPN or whoever would be paying rights fees like ABC did in the old days. That's not happening. And then if we had all of that, we would have, a newspaper assigning a writer to cover it, or ESPN would be having someone cover it. The Associated Press would be having someone cover it, and it wouldn't be some guy sitting in his, in his computer office like I am right now doing it on his free time.
Yeah. It's funny because it's like, when we started Bowling Evolved, and, we have a great writer in Fred Eisenhammer who does a lot of stuff out of California and Nevada. And, I look at other guys, for example, like Brian Hirsch and whatnot, people always assume that, so what do you guys get paid for doing the show? What do you guys get paid for covering these events? I'm like, paid? What are you talking about? Yeah, other than the 73 cents I give Eric every week because, that's what he deserves for the hard work that we put into this show.
Well, I'm definitely overpaid. You need to give me only a quarter.
But
and it's,
I'd be happy with a quarter.
People angry about paying $199 a month, or if you pay it $19.99 a year, it's $1.66 a month. I've had people angry about that, and I'm just saying, hey, I'm just trying to raise a little money to pay my tech guy that's who makes on his regular job a lot of money and did all of this purely out of the love of bowling and deserved to get paid some for his time, and then gave me some funds so I could afford to go to the World Series of Bowling and write the stories that I wrote about it. Go to the PBA League and write those stories. And you can do the math and figure out everything I've spent in that. I'm not pocketing a lot of money. That's why I'm still working at Capital Newspapers. Believe me, that pays my bills.
Yeah.
Well, like you mentioned about the sponsors. I mean, back in the day, there were so many sponsors out on tour. I mean, there was. And they seemed to be just flourishing in sponsorship back in the 80s and the 90s, and then it just all started going away, and there's just no way to bring it back. It appears that way. So whatever they do is only what they can afford to do, and it's just, that's why to me it's nothing like what it used to be. I mean, and I think it goes into all the other areas, lack of coverage now, and it's just people just don't take it as a major sport, or they don't look at it that way. I think they still look at it as a fun thing to go do, maybe as a game. I don't know if they treat it. I don't know if they've ever treated it the right way, but to me, there's less reasons to treat it more like a sport because it's not covered that way, and it's not even covered that way. You know, besides, like you said, yourself, Bob Johnson, who's obviously a very good writer for the Bowlers Journal. I mean, there's only so many people who cover it, and it's almost sad. I'm surprised the Bowlers Journal is still going, to be honest with you.
Well, I think
it's tough for them.
Yeah, I think the irony is too, and I could say from at least coordinating, putting tournaments on and working locally, that when you actually show the numbers to, I'm using local businesses as a basis here, but they don't realize the traffic that a bowling center gets. And I think one of the biggest issues that national sponsorships see is that I think since local participation is down, you don't see these franchisees sponsoring regional events, local events, which means there's nothing getting back to a national company to say, hey, bowling's a worthwhile investment. Now, why that has changed, I really don't have an answer for that. But I think that's really one of the, as you guys have both said, that's one of the biggest key issues, that there only are X amount of sponsors that are willing to put money into bowling anymore. And, yeah, you can't blame the bowler necessarily for not funding the sport. It really needs to come from some sort of outside source. It's just who is it going to be? That's the question.
I mean, you can't get blood out of a rock.
We're not NASCAR, and NASCAR fans, when their favorite driver is sponsored by Company X, they go buy Company X's products. And if you look around the bowling, how many people in the day made sure they bought Quaker Steak motor oil? How many made sure that they bought Firestone tires? And how many bought Seagram's wine coolers when Seagram's was a big one? And these days, do you make sure? I mean, I have Barbasol shaving cream in my bathroom, and those are the types of things I think that bowling and bowlers have not done enough of that NASCAR fans are famous for, and one of the big reasons they're so much more successful than bowling.
No, that's probably I'm sure that's definitely a good reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm just looking at the time, guys. That is going to take us into the end of our show. I am feeling pretty good about this. We're 2 weeks in, and we've actually recorded 2 shows that were very positive, well, for the most part, and with 2 fantastic guests. And I do want to say, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please check out the 11th Frame. It is the 11thframe.com. I always click on the Facebook link, so I apologize if I got the website wrong.
You got it right. Thank you.
Great. Check out the 11thframe.com, or, of course, follow Jeff's stuff on Facebook. We will have a link as well as in our description for the video and on the Bowling Evolved Facebook page. Big thank you also to Fred Eisenhammer for keeping the Bowling Evolved Facebook page going. A lot of great stuff on there. Please check it out at bowlingevolved.com. I think we're around 1,400, 1,500 fans now on our page, which is just fantastic. A big thank you to all of everyone that's supported us over the last several years. And Eric, happy anniversary, my friend, going on 4 years doing this. And I don't know what the hell we're thinking. I'm not sure.
Well, I think obviously we're not thinking. That's why we're doing it. But I think it's fun. It's still fun, and we're kind of getting into it again, trying to get some speed up, considering what you want to do down the road. You talked about we have a different way of doing this in the next couple of months, so got some interesting things happening, and I think we need to continue this conversation a little bit. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about the wrist device. I think we're going to do that on the next show. I think there's still some interesting debate over that topic on should we allow it or should it not be allowed? And there are a few people out there who are very opinionated and do not think it has a place in the game for better players.
Yes. Well, that will definitely be a topic for next time. And as long as Jeff is willing to come back on the show, I'd love to have you on for a second part.
I'd be happy to anytime, guys.
Yeah, consider I know Jeff has had some injuries in the past, and I think he'd be a good person to put a perspective on this topic of why a good wrist device is needed, or should it be used in the higher levels of bowling, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's definitely do that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, stick around for our next show. Again, we are trying to get these up once a week now. hopefully that plan will stay in the queue, as they say. But for Eric Forkel, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Have a great, I almost said great night. Have a great morning.
Good morning.